I would like to welcome you to the Real Watercolor Landscapes with Skip Allen webinar, and this is going to be very exciting. We have a special treat for you because not only is Skip going to let you in on a few of his secrets, but he's also going to be sharing his brushes on his blog. And I laugh at Skip because he claims that he's retired, but I've never seen anyone that is retired that works as hard as Skip Allen. He's a painter master, an instructor at Digital Art Academy, a contributor to Digital Paint magazine. He's a potter, an award-winning artist, and he has an extremely long history in the arts. And outside of all that stuff, he's an extremely nice guy, and he does so much for Corel Painter. So I just want to thank you right off the bat, Skip.
Thank you. Well, hey, everybody. I hope everybody's doing well today. And thank you, Tanya, for such a nice introduction. And I am retired. I'm going to stick with that. I don't know. It's really funny. I thought I was retired, but I am kind of doing more than I thought I would be doing.
Yeah, I would have to say no.
Yeah, okay. Let me talk about the tilt function on the art pen. The art pen does everything that the grip pen does, but it has something extra, and that is it can handle rotation. But as far as tilt or bearing or any of the other expressions, now what we're talking about, for anybody that doesn't know, there are things called expressions in Painter. And I'm over here right now in the general brush control because expressions can be used in your control panels. And we have expressions of velocity, direction, pressure, wheel, tilt, bearing, rotation, source, and random. So what these things mean, I mean, most of them you'll understand. Velocity is the speed is affected. Direction is the direction you're painting. Pressure is how much, weight you press against the tablet with or your Cintiq. Wheel is only going to be usable with the airbrush stylus. You won't be able to use that with your art pen or your grip pen. Tilt, bearing, and rotation is only available with the art pen. But tilt still works with the art pen. You don't have to change anything or do anything to it. Let me see if I can explain what we're talking about here. Oops, got to add a layer. Sorry about that. You would think I would know. All right, so this is our tablet. I never said I could draw a straight line. And this is the pen, the angle that's created from the tablet to where the pen is being held, that's tilt. And so if this is 60 degrees, and it goes 60 degrees this way, these two directions are holding the pen are going to give you identical results, okay, with tilt. With bearing, and this is where people get confused, it's not the angle that's of concern, it's the direction the end of the pen points. So if you point in that direction or that direction, now in the case of bearing, this point and that point are going to give you two different things. Okay, it's not going to be the same like it was in tilt. So that's what tilt and bearing are about. I'm on the art pen right now. I'm in the real 6B soft pencil, so you see tilt would give me this, and whether I go up straight up and down, it doesn't matter with the art pen. Where it would matter is if we change the expression to rotation, and then I would get a different kind of effect. Okay, so I hope that answered that question. Now, the question about the paper. This is an illusion. My friend Tim Shelbourne over at the Artist Quarter, we call it TAC, I love to go. He's got classes over there. I take a lot of, really every one of his classes, and they're mostly in Photoshop. And I do this a lot. I go and do things with Photoshop people, take their classes, and then what I do is I try to switch it around to work in Painter. And it is amazing how much stuff you can do in Painter that they've been doing in Photoshop. but in a lot of ways it's more exciting, at least for me. I mean, I'm not saying one's better than the other or anything like that. I don't get it. They're two different programs totally. But I just really like doing some of the things there. So what Tim had done was he had created some papers that were from actual real watercolor paper. And the way you do this, Karen Bonnecker, by the way, did some as well, and hers are available on her blog and at Painter Talk. And you could download her papers that look like this. But anyway, the way you do the paper is you either go and take a photograph of it and bring the JPEG in, or you do a scan of it. If you've got the ability to give some, you know, some scans will give you just really white. If you've got the ability to adjust your scan so that you can get the variation. Okay, now the paper I'm using here right now is not the paper you're seeing. I'm using Italian watercolor, and I'm actually going to bring the size of it down to about 40, and that's what I'm going to be working on today with the brushes, so you know, so you can see the same sort of thing. What you're seeing on top up here is the illusion. What I've done is I've added the paper over the top. Now, you take your JPEG that you make your paper with, and what you do, and again, this is something that Tim was doing with his Photoshop that I learned. What you do is you make a pattern of the paper. So in my case, I've got some patterns down here of the different papers that Tim and Karen have made. So you take that pattern and you make sure it's active. We'll pick another one. We'll pick this one that's kind of, I don't even know what that is, but we'll pick it. And we'll turn this off and we'll add another layer. And all you want to do is take your bucket tool, make sure you're on source image. Now, anytime you see source image or pattern up here, what that's telling you is that Painter defaults, if you have no clone source, Painter defaults to the pattern that's selected. So in the case of this, source image is the pattern. So I just fill it with the pattern and you get that. Now what you want to do is reduce the opacity till you get it to where you think you like it, and change it to gel or multiply so that it's transparent. And now you're going to work underneath it. So that's all in the world this is about. It's real simple technique. Now if you print, you may not want to do that because, you know, printing it's like printing texture on top of texture. If you're working with watercolor paper, then you might not want to do that. I never print, so I like for the image to look like it's on real paper when people are seeing it displayed digitally. Okay, that took way too long on both those questions. See, now if you ask me a question, I'm going to go off on long tangents. I'm kind of wordy. All right, so let's get to something much more exciting, and we're going to talk about watercolor. Couple of things. I'm going to have some new brushes out, which are called Desert Oasis, and Tim was nice enough to start naming them for me yesterday, and I got them this morning, and I started to go in and try and get the set done, but to be honest, I wouldn't remember the names, and so that would be it would slow me down a lot. So what I'll do when I post the brushes, I will also post like if I'm using Dry Stroke 18, I'll post what the name is, so that if you come back to the video and you've got the brushes and so forth, you'll be able to know what's what, and you'll be able to follow them, follow the video. Alrighty, so let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to close General. I want you to know that you want to come up to Window and go to Control Panels. Go to Brush Control Panels, and either use Control or Command 8, or just click around here and it'll open up all of them. And I like to have all of my brush control panels open at once because I'm going to be using this stuff so much. Excuse me for the cough there. Okay. Now I've got a cool spring. All of these brushes, cool springs and stuff that I'm going to be using now, you can find on my website, which is called Skip Allen Paints. I'm going to use very wet cool spring, and that is a real watercolor brush. And when I switch to it, the panel showed. And I'm going to switch to Pause Diffusion. Pause Diffusion is my new best friend. I mean, it is the most wonderful thing in Painter because you get so many different effects by using Pause Diffusion. Okay, I'm going to pick up a color over here. Now, I have tons of these things, and I also use the mixer pad and the color wheel. But this thing, since I've got so many of these and I kind of know what they are, they get me in a ballpark of a color I want. So that's why I use it. Anyway, I'm going to build this up a bit, and what we're going to do is sketch. We're just going to, put some paint down and see where it takes us. And so this is a brush that I recommend using for clouds. I love the way it paints. Now, I'm not going to try and, if it's a sketch, I don't have to worry about the size of the image or anything, the size of the painting I'm on here. I'm playing. And that's what I want y'all to do, is to play with brushes and just see where they lead you. Now, let's say I want to stop now and go to a different brush, and I do. I want to go to a companion brush, and it was made from the Wet 6. It's called Very Wet 06A. Very creative. If you click on this, keep going through a cycle, you go through these things here, and you'll get to see what the dab is. Most of my brushes work with specific dabs. So right now, this is the dab that I'm going to be working with, but it's not real messy like you'd think it would be. It's kind of smooth. And I'm just going to put a little more of this in here. I want to kind of smooth up some of these marks, but not totally. Now, I know that this brush is I'm going to go back to the 06. It really lightens the color as you go. So I can come in here and put in a fairly strong color and not worry about it at all. Well, maybe worry about it a little bit. But we'll see.
Do you really worry about it, Skip?
Yeah, sometimes. No, I really don't. You caught me, Tanya.
This art is an experimental process.
Absolutely. And with me, it's a hit or miss. Okay, so now the fun part. Everything that you do with flowing, letting the brushes run, is affected by paper. We were looking at the paper earlier. The brighter it is, the faster the stuff will run. The darker, the more resistance you get for the run. So if I were to switch this, that one's going to make it a little bit lighter. Or I can do things like increase the brightness. I can increase contrast and decrease the brightness to get it darker. And that's going to make the runs different. But for this Italian watercolor paper, I like it to be somewhere around 50. It's almost the 100%, except I don't want to have a lot of texture showing with the paper right now. So that's why I have the scale back. Okay, all of that, and I hope messing with the paper didn't mess me up. Pause Diffusion works. Yeah, it's going. Pause Diffusion works with as long as you don't go outside of the library that you're in, and as long as you stay in real watercolor brushes and you don't try to change things up a lot, or you'll get your pause diffusion cycle to stop. But as long as you have pause diffusion on, you can work with multiple brushes, and then the last brush, the current brush that's active, when you release pause diffusion, is the one that everything will take that diffusion or that properties of the diffusion of that last brush is what will be used. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab another brush, and I'm trying to think what I might want to grab, but I know this 06 doesn't work very well, so I think I'm going to go to like 28. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come up to the gray, to the general again. And this one is real wet replace, and we'll talk about that later. But what I want to do is I want to take it and change it to wet remove density. Now that changes it to another kind of brush. Okay, it's now a watercolor brush. It also picks up paint. So it's like an eraser. It removes paint. So what I want to do is I want to take my opacity all the way down to about 1%. And it's very important to have your opacity at 1 or 2%. And what I'm going to do is come up here and just lightly tap on this and see how it begins to remove some of that paint and just brings out the clouds just a little bit. Now you don't want to come into these really dark areas and do it, because sometimes you get a kind of a variation of color. Let me show you. If I start going in there, see that blue kind of color that's coming out? And for me, that doesn't work. So I just stay in the light areas and begin to just highlight those clouds just a little bit.
Skip?
And then, yes?
We had a question from Terry about diffusion. And
okay.
I know that you pause the diffusion and you can turn it off and let it diffuse, but can you stop it mid-process?
Yes, you can. You can do it one of two ways. I have another canvas here. Let me do Control-Tab, and I'll show you what I mean. We'll take the wet brush, and we'll go back to the start, and let's put on pause diffusion. And love it. Okay. Now, I've got one of two things I can do. One is I can come up here to Layers, Dry Watercolor Layer. And if I do that while the diffusion's going on, it will stop. The other is I can hit pause diffusion again and then come over to Dry Watercolor Layer, and that will take it out of the cycle. So let's do both of those. Now, one of the things I do is I have a bunch of these things hanging around, and I use them really for teaching. They're too big for me to paint with most of the time. But I have Dry Watercolor Layer here, so it's easy to get to rather than having to go through the menu system. So we'll hit pause diffusion and let it go, and then hit Dry Watercolor Layer, and it stopped it before it was quite finished. I know it didn't look like it did, but it did. And let's, what we'll do is now another thing that you can do is hit pause diffusion again and undo. And if you've done more than one brush stroke, it will undo the last brush stroke and take you back into the same pause diffusion cycle. So let me show that as well. Okay. And we'll put another one that's going to be a little bit dark. Okay. And we'll do one more like that. All right. Now this time I'm going to pause diffusion and go up in Dry Watercolor. All right. So we click on it, pause, stops, go up, Dry Watercolor. And now it is, if once I dry the watercolor, if I come back on pause diffusion, it doesn't go anymore. Now, what I was talking about before is if you click on Pause Diffusion and undo, it'll take you back to where you were in the beginning, but remember I had one brush stroke right there, and I lost that one brush stroke, so you'd have to put that back in. What's good about that is if you don't like the way it diffuses, you can switch to another brush. So like if I switch to dry stroke 18, which has very little diffusion in it, and I let go of Pause Diffusion, I'm getting diffusion, but there's hardly any with brush 18. It's a very dry brush. So that's the way you can work it. You can pause it to make it permanent, go to Layers, Dry Watercolor Layer. Okay? Hope that helped.
Yep, that was great.
Okay.
So I'll let you continue on here. People are interested in seeing your landscape.
Right. It doesn't seem like we're going to get to one, does it? Okay, so now I've got, my sky sort of started. The other thing that I would do with the sky is I really think skies need to drop back. So I would reduce my opacity of that layer. Okay, so then I'm going to add another layer. And I'm going to try to remember to do Pause Diffusion at the time that I start. And we're going to go to another brush, and I can't remember which one it is. I think it's Dry Stroke 6. That looks pretty good. And we will pick a color that is going to be in a dull brown color, kind of. Let's see if that's going to give it to me, that shade kind of color. Let's bring it over to a little grayer. Okay, so now I'm going to come in with just some activity here. And again, it's on Pause Diffusion, so I don't have to worry about it. You know what? I'm going to change this. I just thought about something we can do different that'll be a lot more fun. Let's go to this brush. And I can make this one a lot darker. Now, this brush is Runny Fill 022, and it will be in the new set. And what it uses is dry replace. Not dry replace, but real wet replace in the general panel. And that is a really interesting brush property, because you can go back with the same brush and just painting very lightly, you can remove the paint, which is really pretty cool. At least I think it's pretty cool. So you can remove the paint and leave some of it or not. Now, what's really interesting about removing it is it's like painting with water. It's like right now I'm wetting the canvas with water. And, everywhere I have laid this paint down is wet.
I'm glad that you're showing this, because we had a question about wetting the canvas.
Oh, cool.
And
all right, well,
you created a video on this, correct?
Yes, yes, there is a video that is up on your site now.
Yep,
so
on our YouTube channel.
Right, the YouTube channel. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab another color, and I think I'll go in and grab that same color I was working with before, that sort of brown, and bring it over to a darker color. And I'm going to pick up another brush, and the brush is Damp Stroke 310, I think. You know what? I'm going to change that. I'm going to go to Fractal Wash Wet. Now this is the Fractal Wash Wet that's in the default brushes, in default real watercolor brushes. And what I'm going to do is paint very, very lightly with this brush. And you see nothing's happening. I'm not getting anything. So I want to paint a little tougher, a little harder, rather, a little more pressure. Now, you see that line at the bottom? You see that it's only filling in where the canvas was wet or where the canvas, where I had painted with that real wet replace brush. And even up at the top, it does the same sort of thing. It stops wherever the painting stopped. Now, I can, with enough pressure, you can go over that area where you've painted. But it takes a fair amount, you know, like I can come up here and go over it like that. And it doesn't really matter too much if you do, but what you've done now is you know where the paint belongs. So now I can go to any other real wet watercolor brush. Have I got this thing on? Did I remember to pause diffusion? I did. Good. We would be in a lot of trouble if we hadn't. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here and just kind of put in a little more of this paint in these areas.
While you're doing that,
sure.
Harry was wondering if the paper textures affect how much the watercolor fade.
No, it comes from in real watercolor, it comes from your settling rate and weight. It also can be affected by the wetness or the concentration. But most of the time, if you adjust the settling rate and the weight, that will affect it.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And do you happen to know what DPI or PPI you've got your canvas at?
Yeah, the canvas is at 100 PPI, and it's 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels. It's not very big. I usually work at 100 PPI almost exclusively, but I don't print. People that do print watercolor tell me that 150, 180 is enough for watercolor PPI. And so at 100, I can move it up to 150, 180. And the reason you need that, the less is okay, is because watercolor is soft to begin with, so it's not going to look so bad. Is that the same color I hit? No, there we go. Any other questions while I'm doing this?
Well, we did have a question, and I want to point out that your tutorials are on our YouTube channel, but how did you use, what brush were you using, or what property of the brush to erase the wet canvas?
I didn't change anything about the brush. Real wet replace, if you apply heavy pressure with that brush, which will be in the set, it's currently called Runny Fill 02-3. When you reduce your pressure to almost nothing, it replaces the paint, I think, with white. I'm not really sure how it works, but I believe it replaces it with white. And if you paint heavy with it again, you'll get your dark color again. And you'll see more of that in a few minutes, so let's not worry about it now. All right, so we've got this image painted like this, and I have I've gone back to my original brush, the Runny Fill 02-03. I'm going to darken my brightness on the canvas a little bit because I don't want this to run too far down past here. And now I'm going to take off my pause diffusion, and you're going to see that it pretty much stays in bounds where I painted. See that line there? That's where I painted to. And so in essence, what we've got going here is we've got the ability to wet a canvas and paint in that particular area, which I think is really terrific. This is a little bit light, so we're going to go over this again with a little bit more color. And what I'll do is, just so that I can get that same thing, is I'll go ahead and put the running fill back on again. And again, it doesn't matter what color we're using. Now I'm applying heavy pressure, and now I'm applying light pressure. And I'm going to come up to size, and my min size, ooh, I forgot to set pause diffusion. I see y'all are supposed to scream at me when I do that. I'm going to take the size down, all the way back up, so that when I do the min size all the way up, when I do the light pressure, it won't reduce in size, and I can get rid of it. Okay, see, lighter pressure, you put a less color. It replaces what's there. And then the lightest pressure, it goes back to white. This is really a neat way to work with this setup. And you know what? I'm going to do one other thing that's kind of fun while we're doing this. Okay, now I'm going to put back some more color. And since I can see it, I'm not going to try and put the, go over it to get the highlights of where I am. I want to go to 23. Everything's on right. This is dry stroke 23. And let's go back and put in some more of that brown.
Skip, do you just imagine these landscapes, or do you ever work from anything in nature as inspiration?
Yeah, I do work from photographs from time to time. I very seldom am out in the woods doing it. But when I'm doing these sketches, I'm not so concerned about what it looks like. I'm really trying to learn about the brushes. And usually I have this done in 10 minutes. So obviously I'm not thinking very well and getting it all done the best way. But yes, it's all from imagination right now. I just sort of play, and I think that's a good way to go. It'll build your confidence on working and all that kind of stuff. All right, so now we're going to go back to my 2302 or 023, and we'll reduce the pause diffusion again. There we go. Oh, you know what? I forgot to do what I was going to do, but that's all right. We'll do it later. Oh, that's looking better. I like that. It looks
really nice, and it's so much fun to watch.
I love watching it. It's like when I was a kid. Now, that's one that some people might want to say, well, I would want to stop it earlier so that it wasn't quite so dark. But you got to remember, this is going to be in the background, so this needs to fade out some. When I was a kid, there was things called magic rocks. And now I'm going to an eraser. Sometimes I use a mask, but right now I just want to get rid of this dark line here. And so I'm just going to come in and kind of erase it out. That's the quickest way. It's destructive, I know, but right now I want that out. So I'm just using an eraser to do it. Anyway, these magic rocks, you would put you'd put these little rocks, they were colored rocks, into a goldfish bowl, and then you'd pour this magical solution on them, and they would start growing these, tall stalagmites or whatever you want to call them. And the watercolor running looks the same way to me. It's just really interesting. Okay, let's do something else and try to get this done. We can also come back and darken this layer if we need to. All right, so I'm going to add another watercolor layer. And this time I'm not going to worry so much about pause diffusion. I just want to start getting some idea of what's happening in this foreground. And so I'm going to do that with a bit of kind of sketchy lines. This is dry stroke 23. And you can make these real nice sketchy lines like this with it. and kind of come forward. And so I'm just developing the plane here that we're going to be coming through. And when you let go, you get something like that with this brush. Now, the nice thing about it is that you can, you know, get trees and stuff by just splashing it. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm sort of pressing hard and just letting it do its thing back there. And we'll come over here and just do a couple of more. Not sure whether they're going to even be in the end result here. And we'll come down here and we'll begin to just alter this. And as I go over the top of it, it's going to get darker. And I like this brush because of the linear quality that it has. And it gives you some nice little variations of color and stuff in there. And I'm going to now pause the diffusion, and I'm going to come back with a brush called Dry Stroke 28 at the moment. And this brush has the real, let me take it back to its original. This brush is using Real Wet Replace, and it's using, well, nothing there. When I did that reset of the brush, it's a good idea to go back and redo your pause diffusion. Okay, I want to go a little darker now. Well, not yet. I can come in here with this brush, and I need to make the size a little bit smaller here. The min size adjusts as long as it's set to pressure. Your min size is what tells you how small the brush can go with light pressure. And I'm going to just detail this out a little bit more. And I'm going to make it a little bigger, like we're way in front of the mountains. Now, when I go light with this brush, you see it's going to take that paint away, and I'm getting some of the brown that's behind it.
I love this brush.
Thanks.
How do you come up with all of these brushes? It's amazing.
I don't know. I wish I knew. I mean, they just, you sit here, really, all you need to do is sit and play. And you play and something happens. And, you know, I went and one day I was looking at the Real Wet Replace, and I had not used it until recently. And it was like, well, what does that thing do? And so you just play till you get it there. So, see, I'm getting this kind of, I'm going to be putting a reflection in here. And see, I can come back and just kind of cut out a little bit of that to make it a little bit more of a reflection, like a reflection. And I can come in here and put in another one here. Actually, that's not a good idea because I'll lose my spot there. But we'll see what we're going to do. Let's take, I want to put a little more color back here. And I'm going to put in some of this kind of blue. Now, watch this. It's going to replace that brown with this blue. Oops, didn't want to do that one.
Do you put together your own color sets, or do you import color sets from images?
I do both, but for the most part, I like putting my own together. Ooh, that's a good question. Let's digress for a minute. What time is it? I want to be able to get this finished.
It's 11:43 right now.
Okay, I think we'll be all right to digress for a second. Okay, if you go to my Cool Spring Brushes and you go to Texture 2, okay, I'm not sure I'm going to find it there, so we'll just go here and do it faster. Go to Texture 2. Now, Texture 2 is a brush that utilizes something called color expression, and it's set to pressure. that means it's going to use the two colors that are in your little pools here. It's going to use your main color and your additional color. So if I take the main color and I make it a fairly strong blue, let's go with, we'll go with this phthalo blue green. And then I come here and use a nice yellow. Let's go with this yellow. Now, when you paint with the brush, when you paint very lightly with it, you're going to get yellow. And as you increase your pressure, the blue is going to come in, but it's going to be mixing with the yellow. So you start getting these nice greens. And you keep going heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier until you get to your regular blue. Okay, now when you're in your watercolor set, let's say it's this fall watercolor that I'm in, what I would do is I would take my dropper tool and I would come over here and select a color. Oops. You have to be in the main color. So I would come over here and select a color, okay? Then you come over here and just click on the Add Color to Color Set, and you click there, and it adds the color. Then what I do is I invert, and I come in and I grab the next color. And I wanted to invert so that I can compare the two. Is there a difference? Does it add any more? Do I want to get it a little darker? You know, so let's say I get the one that's a little darker. This is already highlighted. I just come back over here and click that. I've got a new one. And then click that and select the next one and go on about whatever. That's how all of this fall color thing was made. So sometimes I'll even pick 3 colors and I'll do these. I'll go yellow to blue and then blue to yellow and then yellow to red and red to yellow and then yellow to red to blue and blue to red, you know, and pick these colors. And so then I've got all these colors that are sort of in a complementary set, and that can be helpful for me. And of course, you can do the, you know, make a color set from this image, but if you do that, what you're going to get is so many variations between here and there. I mean, tons of them. And you probably don't want that many, you know, because it gets pretty wild. This color set, when we get to it, this color set right here.
A lot of color sets.
Right. There are even more that aren't showing. This color set right here was made from this, let's see. Oh, shoot. I've changed it. Okay, so I don't have the mixer pad. I had taken, I think, 2 colors and mixed them together on the mixer pad, and I got all those from mixing those colors together. It was pretty cool. Okay, so let me get back to the other thing. Why don't we just hide that instead of trying to stick it in? Okay, Control Tab. We'll go back to our other image. Now, pause diffusion is probably messed up. So we'll see. Let me get back to real watercolor. All right, so let's hit pause diffusion, see if it's messed up. It is, but that's okay. I don't mind this being the way it is. It's not too bad. So I'm going to go to another color, another watercolor layer. And I'm going to come in now again with my runny watercolor brush, make this really small, and I'm going to pick up some of this blue, and I'm just going to lightly put some of this in here. And then I'm going to pick up a little of that pink and put just a tad in there. Okay. Now I'm going to go to another brush that is called Wet into Wet 3 Pickup. And I'm going to go back to this layer. And with it on the brown color, let me go way back up to where I was working. Okay, back with this fall color here. No, actually, I want to go darker. I'm going to run this lightly in here and watch what's going to happen. Isn't that cool? So you can go back in and wet your paint and get it to run. See, and even just put a little line in there like that. I just love that. I think that one was too much, so I'll take that one back. What we've got there is probably enough. Now what I need to do is go to a liner kind of brush, and I'm going to go to Thick and Thin 17. And with this same sort of color, I'm just going to bring in some of these lines or some of the darkness of the watercolor.
I knew that your experimental landscape would come out beautiful.
Well, we'll see. It's not done yet. But you can see, though, that the fun thing about it is that it's, it builds, and at any time you could stop and start cropping, whatever. We'll see how it does. Okay, now, ooh, I didn't want that to happen, but that's okay. We'll just accent it a little bit.
I should know the answer to this, but
okay.
Just a verbal answer would be good. Can you change the names of your color sets?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
You can if you do this. There's no way to come up here and change it like that, but there is a way to get around it. That's my life, is finding workarounds. What you want to do is export your color set. Mm. And when you export the color set, let's say we call it fall color set, and I say OK, and I'm going to export it. Now, I have a place called Custom Painter Stuff, and everything that I keep or make in Painter is in here. Okay, so that's very important for me. So I would go in here and I would take this color set and post it to Fall Watercolor Colors here. So we're going to save it and say it already exists. Do you want to replace it? And I'll say yes. Okay, now I can go to Custom Painter Stuff, and I can go to my color sets, and I can go to that Painter color sets, and I can come here and rename it.
Oh, okay, great.
And then once it's renamed, you just import it back in.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, it's around the world, but it'll get you there.
This might be a good suggestion for something that we should update in the future.
Yeah, that would be nice, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There are also a lot of questions coming in about what are those Karen's watercolors, where do they come from, and how do I get them?
Right. This is not Karen's watercolors, okay? Karen had a workshop. But let me say that Karen Bonacker is the reason I'm here. I started working with Painter in 2008 in June, and I couldn't get anywhere with it. And I went to the Digital Art Academy and started taking classes from Karen. So she's my #1 mentor. And everything I know really comes from Karen. But anyway, she had a workshop where she shared a workspace with us and the palettes that came with workspace. If I were to send this to you, you might get, the commands would be fine, but all of these would be in different places than where you would have them, so the links wouldn't work. This is just a custom palette. It's not something you can really share unless I sent you my workspace at the same time. So, if you want to get If you want to get color sets, we've got those available at Karen's blog and my blog, so you can go and get those there. All right, I'm going to do something a little different here. I'm going to add a regular layer, and I'm going to one of my digital watercolor brushes called Digital Square Pool Blender. And I'm going to make it smaller and go to a very light yellow, because this is very dark the way it works. And I'm above the watercolor with, pick up underlying color. And notice how this blends the color. It just gives it a real nice kind of blending effect and makes it, kind of gives you the feeling of water again, I think. Everything I'm trying to do is make watercolor look as traditional as we possibly can. And so I'm hoping that's what you're seeing. Now, you can use the same blender and add color. So if I wanted to add a little of this reddish color to here, see, I'm just come in and start adding that little bit of color. Now, it's going to get really dark, but, if it's too dark, you can always reduce the opacity of your layer or change its composite method. So this gives you an idea of kind of how that works, and I'm so off where I was going. So let's see if we can get back to something. Let's go. Let's see if we can bring something into the forefront. I love making these evergreens. I learned how to make this from a traditional artist that I watched on YouTube, and I just love the way he works. So I tried to emulate it in digital, and I was pretty pleased with it. But it's just, sort of using the brush in such a way that you just kind of make a evergreen. It's a little bit dark, but I'm going to go now to the one that picks up. You know what? I need to take that out. Sorry, I need to do that again with pause diffusion on. My mistake. Got any more questions? Can we go a little bit long, or does it matter?
Yeah, we can go over. There's no strict cutoff here. Christiana was wondering about this. Is that splashing water brush that you just used it's not going to be a part of the desert oasis?
If it's one of the splashing, if it's one of the ones that's previous, I'll let you know, that it's available. But splashing water will be available on the website. I mean, at my blog. All of my brushes are there free. Desert Oasis just isn't there yet, but will be there, and it will be free too. So, not to worry, you can get all of them.
Okay, great. Thanks for doing that.
Sure. I love to share this stuff. I'm making them mainly for me, but I also enjoy sharing the stuff. Now that's getting a little bit dark here, but I'm finding I like dark stuff. Don't ask me why, but I think I'm in one of those periods. I think old people get in them. I'm an old person.
Well, this will make you feel better because Carrie earlier said that you have a very cool brush brain. You must have been born with it.
Oh, Carrie's funny. Carrie comes to the Digital Art Academy and has fun with us, and I see her on Painter Talk a lot as well. It's really pretty neat. Okay, now I'm going to go back to 18 and back to a darker kind of color. Okay, now what I'm going to do is go back to 28, I think. Yeah, I think that's what I wanted, the run I want to have happen. So we'll take off pause diffusion. Yes, that's what I wanted. All right, so after I get to that point, then I love making lines. So I would come in and take thick and thin, and let's go back to a dark color. And I would come in here and just kind of, you know, give it a couple of fun lines here. I just like to brighten it up a little bit with that. And then I have thick and thin 11. These are all from Cool Springs. And it's the same thing, but it takes paint away. So, you know, it kind of gives you that little bit of a look that you need. I'm going to have to darken that some. Let's see what else I want to do. I want to come to, I need to be able to see my thing. Yeah, okay. I want to go to my wet into wet 3 pickup and make it small again. And I want to be in probably this kind of color here. And then all I'm going to do here is I just want to wet some areas here to bring out some of this paint out into, so that you get some wet edges. And then what I'm going to do is come back with 18 and I'm going to, I notice that my, you know, the limbs were kind of needing to have a little more definition and come out a little further. And I also want to darken this down here because this has gotten to be real dark. Probably shouldn't go that muddy there. Okay, so now let's see what we're going to do. I think what I would do now is probably, I don't have any color and stuff here. To be honest, you know what I would really do? I would probably can this picture.
Oh, no, don't say that.
I really would. I'm not happy with it, but that's what doing these sketches are all about. It's about trying to, you know, make something quick and have it work or not. And let's go back to this layer here. And we need to put just a little definition back here. Oops, not that. That. And we can put a couple across there, kind of highlight the water a little better. And let's put some in here. You know, it's those last little details that can pop the painting. Let's go back up here. Too bright. Too bright. That's what I want, just enough to feel like you're opening up that hole that I had there. Okay, so
Marcia loves your squigglies.
Thank you, Marcia. Okay, so, you know, let's just say we were going to stop at this. Well, I tell you what, I want to do one more thing. I want to go, can't stand this edge down here. So I'm going to go back to my runny stuff, really runny stuff. Come here. No, that's a layer, can't do it there. here. And I want to change, this is a watercolor brush, not a real watercolor brush. So I'm going to, right now the angle is down, and I'm going to increase the wind force a lot, which will allow me to not do anything. It may be that this is in, what am I trying to do? I wanted to get a different color. That's what I'm trying to do. It may be that this is, it's the digital watercolor. Okay, so I want to take that digital watercolor and smooth it out a bit, this stuff right here. So what I'm going to do is drop it to the canvas, and then I'm going to go to Layer, Lift Canvas to Watercolor Layer. And that's going to take it all the way up above everything else, and then I'm going to drag it down to where it was, or somewhere down here. It doesn't have to be exactly where it was, but down here. Right there's fine. Okay, so no, it has to be above that other one. So we got to go one, oops, we have to be right there, I think. Am I there?
Yep.
Yeah, but it doesn't look as nice as it did. That's okay. We'll pretend like it is. Okay, now y'all are pretending with me, right? Now I'm going to come in here. Well, you'll see what I'm going to do in a minute to make it all okay. All right, so I'm going to come in here and soften this edge now.
How in the world do you keep track of all these brushes and know exactly which one you want to use?
I don't. They come in spurts. In other words, I need to go back and do a thing called faves or something. I love it. You know, Jeremy Sutton, wonderful painter, he puts out brushes called his faves. And that's what I need to do, because there's certain brushes I do go back to. And I'm going to soften this line right in here. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop this again to the canvas layer and hope it'll all stay intact. And then this time I'm going to go Control A, and nothing happened. Control A, or Command A with the Mac, will select all. I'm going to go to my Layer Adjuster tool, and if you just click in the middle here, it will float that canvas layer. So I click in the middle, and that brought the canvas layer up. Now I'm going to bring it up to where I need it to be above the other stuff. Oh no, I'm sorry, it's down below. I need to bring it below and put it over. And if this doesn't work, it'll be good. We'll know not to do this again. All right, so now that's put over the top of that. And what I'm fixing to do now is change it to gel. And we have it back as a layer that's gel. It doesn't look quite right here, though. So I'm going to go in, and I really messed that up. So I'm going to delete it. And I'll come up here and add another layer right above there and quickly go back and fix it. So we go back. You know, you mess up these things. Now I learned that I don't want to mess with my digital square pool blender.
You know, I think you're being a perfectionist here, Skip.
Yeah, probably. I always am.
Yeah. Because, to be honest, most masters don't hop on a session and completely finish a painting. They kind of have stuff that's canned a little bit. So I give you a lot of credit for working from a blank canvas.
Thanks.
And answering our questions and entertaining and all that at the same time.
Okay. Well, good. Well, I don't think we wound up with a great one, but while I'm sure you're wanting to close this out, is there any other questions that we can go to?
There's not at this point in time. There was a question about Karen's brushes and that pause diffusion is not on, but I'll follow up with Karen since that's not related to what you're doing here.
Well, pause diffusion wouldn't have anything to do with brushes. It would have to do with, it wouldn't have to do with Karen's brushes or brushes that Karen's watercolor palette or Karen's brushes. That is something you want to set yourself. You want to either put pause diffusion on or take it off. So
for some reason it's grayed out for Deb.
Oh, well, it's grayed out, Deb, because you're not in a real watercolor brush. Look at your general panel, and you'll see whether or not it says right up here in method, it should say wet, and then it should say real watercolor. Now, if you're in Karen's nature water brushes.
She's in Karen's real watercolor too.
Real watercolor 2's mine, I think. I think it is. No, I'm not sure. But anyway, real watercolor 2 would not be any real watercolors in there. That set was made in 2009 before Painter 12 was even beginning to be thought of. And I called them real watercolor. And then later they came up with real watercolor. And so people get it confused. Those are all water brushes, and they will not, you cannot use pause diffusion with them.
Okay, I'm glad I asked then.
Yeah, that's the question.
And Deb says thank you.
You're welcome, Doug. How are you doing?
Oh, Deb. D-E-B.
Oh, Deb. Sorry. Okay, I was just going to show this thing that I popped up. This is one that I showed on my blog. That's an example of something done in like 10 minutes or so. And, when I'm just doing a video or just doing, just playing, it's a lot easier. And this shows you one that's in progress. I never really finished it.
Love the colors.
So, thanks. It's fun to, switch around in different colors and all that kind of stuff. This is, now, like this one this was in one of my classes that I did. And this is just making washes, and all I did was a little line work right here, but the rest of it is just washes. And so you can just take washes and put them down and let them flow into whatever, and then, just decide what looks like a landscape and pop it with 1 or 2 lines. That's really good to do. Okay, I think I've shown you pretty much everything I can show you. Well, probably not, but... Well,
no, that was fabulous, Skip.
Okay.
It was really great. And I know you haven't been feeling well either, so we appreciate your being a trooper here.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, looking at this now, it's not too bad. And if I'm really sorry that I messed up these parts. But again, another thing to do is crop. Cropping makes a huge difference. See, just that made a big difference in the way this...
It looks beautiful.
And the way this thing, well, thanks, Tanya. But the way this thing works, if you crop, you really can make things work very well for you. So.
Now, do you usually put a signature on your work?
Yeah. Not always.
You don't have to do it now. We're going to go ahead. It's already 15 minutes after.
Okay.
Thank you again.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. Thank
y'all for coming.
Yeah, so there's everyone saying thank you in the panel here for you. So thank you again for attending today. Skip, do you want to say anything in closing?
Just bye-bye, and also I forgot to mention, check out Digital Art Academy for our classes that we have over there. And if you go to my blog, Skip Allen Paints, go ahead and subscribe to it, and you'll know every time I update then. And I would love it if more people would subscribe to the blog. Thank you, Tanya.